Greetings to one and all, it's your old buddy Jay here, coming at you with another Countermeasures intermission. Now, this week I would like to talk about Zack Snyder's Justice League, which just came out yesterday on the 19th of March 2021. And I was lucky enough to be able to watch it yesterday in the UK. Now, anyone that does want to watch this film, you can go to Now TV and sign up for the 7-day free subscription, and you'll be able to watch it through the Sky Movies link that Now TV has. So yeah, I didn't have to pay to watch this film at all. I cancelled my subscription straight away afterwards. They're kind of, I'm always a little bit disappointed with the underhandedness of some of these apps where they basically log you in for a sort of free period, but then when you look at the details, you start paying after 6 days, and then there's a whole load of other stuff that they sign you up for, and they're kind of banking on this idea that maybe you might actually forget that you've got a membership with them and just roll on, or you might actually like the site, which I didn't. So yeah, I just watched the film and then cancelled my membership, and I'd suggest that you do exactly the same. So nothing downloaded illegally, didn't have to wait 6 months for this to come out over in the UK, or watch it in cinemas. I did actually manage to watch it on my TV, which was great. Now, I want to talk about Zack Snyder's Justice League because it's been a little bit of a sort of point of contention over the years. A little bit of backstory. Basically, the film came out originally in 2017, was released by Warner Brothers, and the film, basically Zack Snyder was fired from the film, slash left the film in the middle of shooting due to a family tragedy, and then this film was then picked up by Joss Whedon, who then took the footage that existed, butchered it completely, and then added in his own scenes. And the problem with that is that, when you have two cooks trying to achieve two different things on the same final product, it ends up being a little bit of a mess. And full disclaimer, I did get to go to a screener of the Warner Brothers version of Justice League back in 2017 at the Odeon Cinema in Leicester Square. It was a press event, and I was lucky enough to get to go along and watch it. And at the time, I did actually think it was quite fun. It's good to see all of these characters come together on screen. I've been a long time comic book fan, and I was really looking forward to seeing all of these epic characters work together and go through a story. Now, the story itself probably isn't that great. I think from the original version and through to this one, I'm not convinced that the story is very good. The film itself takes place in Gotham and Metropolis, and the idea is that there are 3 mother boxes, which are like these MacGuffins, if you like, that exist throughout the world, and they are sought after by a great sort of mega conqueror called Darkseid. And Darkseid is basically the Thanos of the DC universe. So straight away, I feel that it already feels like a weaker version of the Marvel stories, essentially doing the same thing, which is there's a conqueror coming to the planet. He wants something specific, whether that's the Infinity Stones or the Mother Boxes, and it's up to our heroes to stop them. So the story isn't particularly that great. It's a little bit cookie cutter, and Marvel did do it first, and they did it amazingly. So they do have, DC do have a bit of a problem there. So straight away, I think the story is weaker. So then you think, well, maybe the character development and the time you get to spend with the characters will be worth it and will balance that out a little bit. And actually, in the original cut of 2017, it doesn't. They just mashed it all up. They had seriously big problems with reshoots. Henry Cavill had to have his moustache moved digitally, which it is just an epic amount of money spent on something that was really unnecessary. And yeah, it just didn't really do very well. So after that, there was a big backlash because you had lots of people who liked the film, lots of people who were forcing themselves to like it, I believe, lots of fanboys that were defending it, and then a lot of people that just didn't think it was very good. Now, I'm a massive fanboy, but I didn't think it was all that great on reflection. On the time that I did see it, I enjoyed it, on a kind of surface level. And then when I started thinking about it, I realized that actually, it isn't really very well put together, and it wasn't really very well done. The style of the film was, very conflicted, because Zack Snyder has a very particular way of filming his films and a style that he applies to all these kind of CGI and VFX. And Joss Whedon has a completely different approach to that. So trying to force one style into another didn't really work. There was a lot of recoloring issues, a lot of imbalance on all of that kind of, the styling of the costumes in daylight versus nighttime, and all that kind of stuff kind of caused a real problem, I think. And again, no one thing was a problem with that 2017 film. It was a combination of things. So what happened then was that the general public started shouting out #release the Snyder Cut, believing that there was a whole load of footage that existed of Zack Snyder's original cut of the film, original idea for the film before his departure. So over the years, obviously people were campaigning for it. I think there was like a billboard in New York that people paid a lot of money to get the logo up there and to basically say release the Snyder Cut, etc., etc. There's been lots of campaigns going on. And then there are members of staff that said they'd actually seen, members of staff are the members of the crew and the actors that had actually seen various cuts of the film. And it turns out over time that Zack Snyder's version did exist. There was a lot of footage shot, but needed some money behind it to basically finish all the VFX. Now, over time, that gained some momentum, and HBO came along and basically put the money up. So I think originally they said it was going to be a $30 million additional cost to kind of finish everything off in the way that Zack wanted. But actually, I think the final figure was closer to 70 million by the time they'd invested in it all. So then the news broke that this was coming out and that it was a real thing, and that Zack Snyder would get to go back and actually finish his realization of the film in the way that he wanted to. And I think that that's a good thing that they was able to do that. I think there's something to be said for someone who starts something in a creative way, has a particular vision for that, but then is denied finishing that. Is something which is a very sad thing for anyone who is a creative, who doesn't get to express their kind of true intention and the true solution for that particular brief. So I feel that him being able to go back and do that as a creative, he would have been very happy with that. And from various blogs that he's put up and various videos, etc., on Twitter, he seems to be having quite a good time putting it all together in the way that he wanted. What then happens is the 2-hour version in 2017 kind of balloons into this almost 4-hour epic, which is the Snyder Cut, which has been chopped up into, I think it's 6 parts. Originally they were going to release them in separate installments, so you get like the first hour and then the next 45 minutes or 45 minutes sections or whatever. But I'm really glad that they didn't do that, because this film doesn't really cater to be broken up in that way. I think it needs to be seen in its entirety, otherwise you start to kind of lose the thread of what's happening. And essentially what the additional footage does is it adds a whole new level of character development for all of those characters that feature in the Justice League. So you've got like Cyborg and Batman, Superman turns up, spoilers, Wonder Woman and Aquaman. So all those guys have much more in-depth story beats. Their sort of their journeys throughout the film are focused on a lot more about their character development, about where they're from, about interactions with their families, friends before they actually become part of the League, and it all goes to building a much stronger narrative that ultimately is a better payoff in the end. Is it a better film than the 2017 version? Yes, it is definitely a better film than the 2017 version, because there's far more information in there. Is it actually a film, is my question. I think I guess it is, but it couldn't really be viewed at a cinema. I don't really feel like the format of this, the length of this is something that people want to go and see in the cinema. Maybe you'd go for like a one-off viewing in the IMAX, which is hence the kind of ratio change of the actual film. So it's not on your widescreen, it's like a 16:9. It's another ratio, so more like 4:3. But that's probably tailored more towards these kind of individual screenings at IMAX cinemas, but it's not really a generally released film. So in that respect, I don't think this would have ever been the original version. I think the original version probably would have been, all of Zack's work, but just cut down to a sort of shorter story, or perhaps 2 films, which essentially is what it is. It's 2 long films put together. So I think the format of having it on HBO is absolutely the right place for it. And, I think it's just more of a marathon sort of TV show than it is really a film, and a TV show that has the highest budget of all time. Because don't forget, Warner Brothers already spent millions on this. They spent millions and millions on reshooting. They spent millions on, putting it all together in the first place. And Zack Snyder managed to get all of the funding together to support his original creative vision. So, the basic story, like I said, is pretty simple. The team have to unite, and ultimately they do fail in a few aspects in this film, and then they do unite towards the end. So that is, obviously there's some kind of progression there. But again, I felt that story, the story beats for the individual characters are very good. The core of the story hasn't changed that much from the original, and I do have a problem with the core. I don't really think it's particularly a great story, but the writing is fine. The dialogue is fine. They haven't spent a lot of time overthinking it. It is just straight out of the comic book pages, really. So we're talking about something that is more of a soap opera than it is a movie. And I think that in that respect it does work. Now, it wouldn't be a design YouTube channel if I didn't actually talk about design. So I do want to talk just very briefly about Zack Snyder's general style. He tends to have a particular look and feel for all of his movies. So if you've ever watched 300, or you've seen Sucker Punch, or you've seen The Watchmen, there is a similar look and feel to how his movies, how his vision translates onto screen. It's very grainy. There's a lot of VFX in every shot. It's all very stylized and over the top. And I love it. I think it always looks visually interesting. And I like the way that, that particular style has a very strong connection to comic books, but has, in its own way. It's not paneling out some films in the past have actually had panels in the visuals to make it more comic booky, or turning pages, stuff like that. It doesn't really apply here. The style of this film is much more like a sort of moving graphic novel, and if you do pause any of these screens at any moment, what you'll see is that the visual side of it, in itself could it could be a work of art. Really could be a work of art. It could be an illustration that someone has done. It could be a singular frozen image on the wall of any shot from this film just looks amazing. And to see that moving and animated in that way is pretty incredible. I think there isn't enough credit given to firstly his ideas about that, but ultimately he's not responsible for what the finished product of that looks like, other than pushing the VFX teams and pushing the CGI companies to actually make it as in the way that he can. So there's a kind of working relationship and a compromise going on there, and the VFX people suggesting ways to do things that he's then taking on board. So there's a collaboration happening to ultimately build the style of this film, and I think it works really, really well. I love all of that. I think that looks amazing. Again, if you pause the film at any point, it looks great. You have to detach yourself from the rest of the movie to fully appreciate that, because I think if you're going to give this a score based on that alone, it's a 20 out of 10. it has to be. It looks incredible. That said, it can't always look incredible. So you can see in the Snydercut that there are sections where the VFX obviously hasn't been finalized as well as it would have been in the original production. So there are a few bits that are a little bit ropey, but you know what? I'm fine with that. I think, if 90% of the film looks that incredible and the rest is kind of, there's a few bits here and there, I'm good with that. That works for me. So yeah, and again, moving on from the general sort of look and feel of that, the color palette throughout this film is very muted and grey and mean and dirty, and that is something that Zack Snyder injects into all of his films. That feeling of realism is highlighted by those colors and that entire color palette. And I think that's again a reason why the Joss Whedon version didn't really work, because they were taking that palette and trying to bump up the resolution, colors, and the brightness and the contrast on everything to make it light and more Marvel-like, when it really isn't the tone that this film was originally going for. So in terms of tone, I think that bringing it back to that has really helped this film. It is meant to be dark and mean and moody, and whether that's your vision of Superman, does it really matter? I mean, that's his vision of Superman, so that's what you're seeing. But would I like to see, the original Christopher Reeve running around in his cape, flying around in the bright colours, saving everybody? Yes, I would like to see that, because that is Superman to me. But also, I appreciate that this kind of more dark and gritty universe can also exist, and a lot of comic books have lent this way ever since, books like The Dark Knight Returns came out, or The Killing Joke. Those books all added more realism on top of these kind of fantastical characters to end up where we are today. So then we end up with films like Batman Begins and The Dark Knight, and and then ultimately we end up here, which is a crazy sort of comic book world, but stooped in realism. So I think that works very well, and that kind of color palette feeds into that kind of theme, and I think that is successful. I mean, you can't watch this film without appreciating the editing and the VFX. It's impossible not to. Now, I do have a list of of companies here that have been involved with the VFX. They don't get enough praise, in my opinion. Zack Snyder gets all a kind of thumbs up. He obviously thanks his team, but there are companies like DNEG, MPC, Scanline, Weta Digital, Pixamondo. These companies all go all out to make this, have gone all out to make this a success, and I think it is a success in their eyes. And I think if anyone's involved with that, any of the designers and the creatives involved with the process of putting all that together, because there is not 1 second in this film or one scene where there isn't a massive amount of CGI. Even when they're talking, there's stuff going on. There's things going on in this film that no one will really fully understand. I mean, never mind about the mustache. I think there's probably, there's a little bit of slimming down of Ben Affleck in some in some scenes and things like that. And I think, fine, just go for it. I mean, if you're going to do it, go all in. I think the length is probably a bit of an issue. I think they probably could have squeezed this 4-hour film down to like 3.5, because there is still some bloating in this, which, again, I'm not complaining, because I'll sit and watch any of the DC stuff again and again, any kind of comic book films again and again. Whether I like them or not is irrelevant. They're kind of just popcorn movies, and I enjoy them. But I do think that the length of this was a little bit too much. I think that overall it is a success. I'm glad that they went back and did it. I mean, increasingly now in this day and age, the audience is having a bigger say on what's happening with the films that you're watching. I mean, it used to be, this is the film and that's it, and then maybe you get like a Ridley Scott cut of something. There'd be a whole load of fanboys going on about how there's this version of the film, there's that version of the film, and then eventually you'd see like the recut version of Aliens of what it was meant to be. And it was never really about fan demand. That was always about what the director envisaged, and that is something obviously Zack's done here. But also, this is a product of massive kind of social influence, social media influencers wanting this. This is the kind of the audience that this is meant for, shouting out for the proper version that they wanted. Now, that's something that happened recently with the Sonic the Hedgehog movie. They released a trailer. It came out like beginning of 2020, I think, and they released a trailer which had Sonic the Hedgehog in, and everybody just had a massive backlash about that look of that character, because he's so beloved. So rather than just ignore it and push on and basically the film would be a failure, they then went back and redid all of the scenes with Sonic in. They changed him up, they made him look a little bit more like the Sonic that everybody knows and loves, and the film came out and it was a massive success. It was really, really popular. Now, that's because they basically bent and helped shape this film into the thing that the fans wanted, because it was for the fans. They weren't just going to push this forward. And I think that that's something to be said about the power of the audience. Like games like Mass Effect 3, they changed the ending on that because people had such a big backlash about the fact that all of the choices that you make throughout all of those games just comes down to like, press one of these 3 buttons, here are a couple of options. So when this film came out, and when the support was swelling behind it and eventually it came out, I was really pleased about that, because I think that people should have a say in that. That said, I also think there's a place for people to have a very focused look at this is what I want my film to be, and I don't care what other people say. So you can approach it in 2 different ways. I think it's good that we have both of those options in this world, and I think that this film has definitely benefited from it. So just to wrap it all up, like I said, I didn't go too much into spoilers with the story. I mean, the story hasn't changed much from 2017. The antagonist, Steppenwolf, is much more fleshed out, and I think that's a good thing. I think these characters are, much more fleshed out. You get more of a story, and therefore you have more of an emotional resonance with them. And I think it's been a success, and I'm really glad that it does exist. And now Joss Whedon's sitting somewhere licking his wounds. That guy is not having a good time at the moment, and quite rightly so. It looks like he's been getting himself into a bit of trouble, and you can't be an idiot like that on set and to your crew without some kind of backlash. And it sounds like he's been doing that for years, and this is just the final nail in the coffin, sort of undoing his creativity and his input on the film that should never really have been given to him in the first place. So well done to everybody for basically pulling that out of the bag, and I'm really glad that this did actually become a thing, because I was really looking forward to it, and it didn't disappoint. My expectations were quite low, to be honest, but in the end I think they did a great job. So if I had to score this out of 10, I'm going to give this a solid 8 out of 10. It does have problems, but I think, compared to the original, it's miles ahead. So yeah, I think it's well worth watching. If you get the opportunity to watch it, then do. I mean, I'm not sponsored by Now TV in any way, but that's the way that I watched it, and I watched it for free, and and I really enjoyed it. So I hope you do too. So until then, be good, stay safe, be kind to one another. Cheers.